Hello all, and welcome to ManageEngine Mobile Device Manager Plus training. My name is Naveen, and I would be your trainer for the day. Please confirm on the chat if you are able to hear my voice and view the presentation. I am awaiting for your confirmation. Okay, thank you. So let's get ahead with our training schedule. Last week, we had a training on app management and device security. This week or today, we will be focusing about device enrollment and device provisioning, which would be the first step to perform on a device in order to manage it. To take a look at last week's training, you can access the link below and you can take a look at our training. So for the training agenda, first, we would have an overview of the Mobile Device Manager Plus product, a brief introduction about the product, a bit of the architecture, and how MDM manages these mobile devices. Next, we would be dealing with enrolling these mobile devices in. So you have two scenarios, devices that are already in use and new devices. So we would see how we are going to enroll these devices. Next, once the devices are enrolled, you would like to push certain configurations so that they are device ready. So we would help you or train you in order to create some basic policies and also help users or admins, I would say, restricting access to their email services. And at last, we would be discussing on certain scenarios that were handpicked with the above mentioned topics, along with some questions that were asked during our previous training session. Now, let's get started with our first topic for the day, overview of the Mobile Device Manager Plus. MDM supports well-known operating systems like Apple's iOS, Android, Windows, and the Chrome OS as well. We support all smartphones, tablets, and even your Windows 10 machines when it comes to Windows-based devices. So how is the MDM available? The MDM is available as a standalone solution that is supported on the on-premise as well as the cloud platform. It is also available as an add-on with our flagship product, Desktop Center, used to manage legacy computers, thereby completing an endpoint management solution. We have also released our Mobile Device Manager as an MSP edition for multi-tenant system. Now, for the integrations with other applications. So in the recent releases, we have built or we have released an API integration that helps you to integrate the MDM with any third-party solution that we like, or we have certain customized integrations for you. One is to say solutions like Spiceworks, which is a ticketing tool, or to one of our sister products, which is Service Plus Plus, which is also a ticketing tool. And we also have integrations with our other sister products like Zoho Creator and Zoho CRM so that it can get started or it could give you a boost in when it comes to managing your devices as well as your applications. And now for the Mobile Device Manager Plus architecture. So MDM has adopted a universal architecture which comprises of three main components. One would be the mobile devices that are owned by you. Two, the MDM service that is provided by us. And three, the notification services that are maintained by the device vendors, namely Apple Push Notification Service, APNS for iOS, Firebase Cloud Messaging, FCM for Android, and the Windows Notification Services, or WNS, for Windows-based machines. So for the communication, the MDM server leverages on the notification services in order to wake up these mobile devices, which in turn gets in touch with the server directly, thereby completing the communication cycle. As a security measure, we provide a secure gateway add-on which forwards the device request to the server, thereby securing it from external threats. You can also integrate your Active Directory services for device authentication and assignment purposes. Now, for the ports used by the MDM solution. So the important port over here would be your device to mobile device manager plus server communication in case you're going for an on-premise setup. And that port is the 9383 port. The rest of the ports here are so that the server can contact the notification services, which in turn reach out to the mobile devices in order to wake them up. So this completes the architecture. But how are the devices managed? Well, for the Android devices, we use the MDM application to manage the devices, while for your iOS, Windows, or your Chromebooks, we use the native client that is given by the manufacturer itself in order to manage these mobile devices. So let's take a quick tour of the MDM product. For any admins who have joined in recently to a product, you can just use this as a heads up. So first, we have our layout over here, the Home tab, which is a dashboard which contains all of your details, like the number of devices that has been enrolled, platform summary, BYOD summary, and the app summary. We also have a small audit log feed where any action that you perform on the devices would be listed out. Then we have our device management tab, something that was discussed in previous week's training in detail regarding your profiles, your applications, and even remotely controlling your mobile devices. So you can take a look at that training video as well. Next, we have our inventory. So as the name suggests, this is where all of your device details are. So any device that you enroll, you find the device summary, you can perform various actions on the devices. So it holds a lot of fun stuff that you can do on your device end itself. And next is the Enrollment tab, which is the key tab that we would be discussing today, wherein you'd find a lot of enrollment options, say for your devices that are already in use and for your fresh or corporate devices. We then have the Reports tab, wherein you can generate reports based on the devices that have been enrolled with the MDM solution based on application, etc. And then you have the Admin tab, wherein you can add additional users into the MDM. You have your integrations as discussed in the previous slides. So all these important details that an admin needs to have at his fingertips would be under the Admin tab itself. And at last, we have the Support tab. So here, all your blogs, forums, knowledge base, in order to get this MDM kickstarted will be over here. And you can also reach us to our toll-free numbers or the live chat if you have any questions regarding the product. And speaking about live chat, we have an expert panel waiting over here. So use the chat as much as you'd like to ask any questions regarding the topics that we will be discussing today. So let's go ahead into our topic, which is enrolling the mobile devices into the MDM solution. So consider I am under an organization called as Zilka. So I am the IT administrator, and I would have to enroll devices into the MDM so that I can manage them. So here I'm placed with two scenarios. One, with devices that are already in use, and two, with fresh devices or new devices that are purchased by the company. So what are the enrollment options that are available for your personal devices? So we'd start off with something simple, like your BYOD devices, in case you have a large employee base. So we have two enrollment options available, which is to send enrollments via invites or having the user to self-enroll their devices. So what are the benefits of going for enroll via invite or self-enrollment? So first, we would isolate the personal space and the corporate space, which is the containerization. We would then prevent unauthorized data access. That is within your container, and we would also restrict the sharing of corporate data between the applications or even uploading it to cloud services. So this is the advantage of going for invites or self-enrollment, one which you would necessarily require in a BYOD device. So first we start with a simple task to enroll users via invites. So the admin sends an invite to the user. The user would then accept the invitation by scanning a QR code or accessing the enrollment URL given over there, followed by which the device would be registered or enrolled, I would say, with the MDM solution. So let's see how that works. So under the enrollment tab is where you would be performing all these enrollment options. And before I go ahead and enroll, say, an iOS device, for example, I would have to set up something called as the APNS certificate. So remember, we were talking about the Apple push notification services. So this is the token that would, kind of like integrate your MDM and your APNS service. So I've already updated the details over here. So let me take you to another portal where we can kickstart this APNS setup. So under the APNS, you'd first give your corporate email address and your organization name. You'd hit create and you would sign a CSR file. But now I'm posed with an issue wherein there is a CSR has been signed, but it hasn't been, say, signed by us. So in which case, the services is not able to reach one of our particular servers. So we would download a file for you, which you could send it over to the support team, and we would sign it for you. So once you get the details signed, all you'd have to do is just sign into the Apple push notification portal. You upload the file that has been signed by us, and Apple would in turn return a token over to you. So that token has to be uploaded in this upload APNS file that you see over here. So if I click on next, I can upload the APNS. I can mention the corporate ID with which it was created so that we would notify you as this token would be renewed once a year. And we also have a notification service where you can provide the same email address or a different email address in case it's an entire admin group. So once the APNS is uploaded, you'll be faced with a page like this. So now we are ready to enroll devices into the MDM. And for your Android, there is no such certificates for your FCM, so you can directly start enrolling your Android devices. So now I am going to send an email to your iOS devices. So I click on Enroll Device, Apple, iOS devices. I'm placed with two options, by myself and through user invites. By myself is recommended in a case wherein the admin is enrolling his or her own device, but we would be discussing on the through user invites option. So first thing that you see over here is the user type, which is a local user and a domain user. So a local user is a username and an email address, as you see over here, whose details are stored within the MDM solution. So we have an internal AD where we would store all these username and email addresses with no domains attached. But if you'd like to import, say, your users from the Active Directory, you can go ahead, integrate your MDM solution with the Active Directory, and then choose the option Domain User. And from here, you have the ability to choose the domain and then select the user as well. So if I go ahead and choose a user, his username and email address would come up over here. Now is the next status, which is owned by, whether the device is owned by, say, the user, in which case it's personal, or whether the user or whether the device itself is owned by the corporate company. Followed by which I can assign the device to a particular group. So this is a case wherein I can automatically deploy any profiles or apps that has been assigned to the group previously. So how does the email come up in the mobile devices? So this is how the email is displayed. So you have your QR image that is generated, you have your links that are given up over there, and your user would just have to follow these steps. you can also make some changes to your email enrollment or your template itself that is being distributed. So once I click on send enrollment invite, the user would get a new invite to his or her mailbox, and then they can go ahead and enroll their devices. So over here under enrollment pending tab, you would have a look at all of the enrollment requests that has been sent from the MDM solution itself. And then you have your staging area, which again is for certain, say, enrollment options, which we would be discussing later on. And now for the manage part is where once the device has been enrolled, all of your device details, whether they are managed or enrolled or unmanaged, would be listed out over here. So you can just click on the device and continue. So now we have seen how you can distribute, say, an email to just one single user. But what if you'd like to send it to 500 users at one single go? So that's where the bulk enrollment option would come into play. So you can obtain a CSV file from your AD, which has all the usernames and email addresses. You just have to provide the necessary details that are mentioned out over here, like platform type or the group name if required, and then import your CSV. So once we get the required details, we would automatically send out enrollment requests to each and every user that is mentioned out over there. So this is how we go about sending email enrollments in a bulk. So let's see what happens on the device itself. So when you send out an enrollment invite, like I had mentioned, so the users, if it's a targeted enrollment invite or a bulk deployment, this is the step that they would be performing. So they would access the URL, hit on continue, the MDM profile would be installed. They would then go to step 3 to allow the user or allow the MDM to install the profile, and the profile would be installed in the device, in which case the device would be managed. So this completes the enrollment process when it goes through enroll via invite. So next case is for self-enrollment. So self-enrollment is a case wherein you are not, or the administrator is not going to distribute emails to each and every user who's out there. Instead, you are just going to copy paste, say, the self-enrollment link that is generated by us in the portal over to one of your solutions. So your users would have to enter their Active Directory credentials in order to get the devices registered with the MDM solution. So here under the self-enrollment option, you have the details listed out. So the first step is to allow the self-enrollment either for, say, all AD groups that has been synced from your Active Directory or just for selected AD groups. So it's always key to note that the self-enrollment would work only if your Active Directory solution is integrated with the MDM. So once that is done, you can also specify an email notification if a device has been enrolled through the self-enrollment option. You can also auto-assign the devices to specific groups once they have cleared the enrollment process itself. And remember, I was talking about a special link that would be generated by our service. So this would be the URL that your users would have to access in their mobile devices. So let's see how that pans out. So the self-enrollment is where once the user accesses the particular URL, we would direct them to install the MDM application, or if it's an iOS device, we would go through the setup process on the Safari browser itself. So once that is done, the details would be posted on the device itself. They click on on-premise. They mention the server details like MDM server name, the port number, and the email address that is in their AD solution. So once that is done, they would have to provide their password in order for authentication purposes and then hit on continue. So in this case, we would give them all the actions that has to be activated. And once they activate that, their devices would be enrolled with the MDM solution. So now we have seen in detail as to how you can enroll your devices through invite, through bulk invitation, as well as your self-enrollment option. So please do note that this is just for your BYOD devices or devices that are already in use. So what if they are corporate devices, fresh devices that you would be enrolling into the MDM. First of all, you'd have to complete the initial setup manually, and then the admin or the user intervention is required in most cases for your enrollment. So how can we tackle this situation? Well, MDM has certain automated enrollment methods for you, which you can use for your devices. Say for your iOS, Apple has a structured enrollment process with Apple Configurator and Apple Business Manager, which was formerly known as DEP or Device Enrollment Program. Android, in the other hand, has is the EMM token enrollment and the zero touch enrollment. So first, we would be looking at, say, the partial automated enrollment options, which is namely your Apple configurator and your EMM token enrollment. But before that, what are the benefits of going for an automated enrollment? You can go ahead and silently install your applications. So this we had discussed on the previous training session. You can always use the chat if you'd like to have the link for the previous training session as well. So silent app installation is supported. You can lock your devices down in kiosk mode for single purpose devices. And you can also get full support of our profiles and configurations. So these are the benefits of going for automated enrollments. So let's dive into our first enrollment, which is Apple Configurator. So Apple Configurator is where you have your Apple Configurator application on a Mac machine. You connect the devices via USB, and you then apply something called as the blueprint. So this would activate the device, and the devices would be registered with the MDM solution. So to first go ahead, we'd have to set up the Apple Configurator services, wherein we would have to add the MDM server and then configure the iOS setup assistant. So let's see how that pans out. So this is the Apple Configurator services. Remember, I had mentioned that you would have to create something called as the blueprints. So here you click on the edit blueprint option. On the bottom left, you have new. You give a meaningful name. So once that is done, you have created a blueprint, and now you would have to enter certain details over here. So you would prepare this blueprint. So the first option and the most important option is to supervise these devices so that you have maximum control of the devices itself. Next would be to give in your server details, which is the MDM server details itself. So if I click on new server over here, if I hit on next, I would have to give a meaningful name, which again is MDM Zulka. And then I would have to copy a URL that has been generated by my service. So where do I find that URL? So that would be under the MDM solution. So here under enrollment, Apple, you have the Apple enrollment program, which is the ABM service, and the Apple configurator, which we are discussing right now. So here under Apple configurator, you can click on the steps. Version 2.0 would be what most of your admins or most of the Mac machines would be supporting right now. So over here, we have given you the entire steps as to how you can create, the blueprint itself. So if you move over, you would find the server details, which can be copied and pasted right over here. So once that is done, you can just hit on the previous details, hit on next, you'd give your organization name. And here is where you skip the entire initial setup part. So if you don't want to go through any initial setup of your devices, you can just set up this option saying that don't show any steps, which would directly take you to the home page in your device. So you hit on prepare, your blueprint is now ready. You click on done on the bottom right. You connect a device to your through USB to your Mac machine. You double click on the device and then you prepare it, or you would say apply this blueprint that we have just created. So if you're going for a more sneaky way, wherein you don't want to create a blueprint, but you directly like to prepare this one device, the same process of your blueprint can be done over here. Or you can apply, say, create a blueprint and just keep on adding it or applying it to all the devices that has been connected to the service itself. So once a blueprint is going to be applied, Apple would erase the device and then configure the device itself. So let's see what happens on the device end. So the device would go through the device activation step, which is the first step, where it say hello. You would have to provide the Wi-Fi solution, and then you would have to click on apply configuration. So once that is done, the configuration would be applied. No initial steps would be shown, and you would directly land on your welcome to iPhone page. So the next page would be your home screen itself. So once this is done, you'd have to assign the enrolled devices to your employees. So to assign your enrolled devices into to your employees, you'd have a particular button over here. Under the Apple configurator, we have all of the devices that would have been enrolled through the Apple configurator listed out, and here you have the assign user option. So this is, again, similar to something that we had just seen, which is to send out an email enrollment. So over here, the same, procedure applies, whether it's going to be a local user or a domain user to whom you are assigning this device to. So you give a meaningful name. So you select the domain, I'm sorry. You give a username. You assign it to a particular group and also give the device a name in order for sorting purposes within the MDM. So you click on assign, the assignment process would be complete. Another place where you can find the same would be under your staging area over here. So you can assign your devices as per your requirement. Now, for our next topic, which would be EMM token enrollment. So this is focused, guys, on your Android devices. So how does it work? First, we would download our MDM application using a DPC identifier that was provided up by us or provided to us by Google themselves. So we would automatically install the application, and all you'd have to do is just point the device to a particular QR code that is present in your service. Once that is done, your devices would be registered with the MDM. So over here, under EMM token enrollment, you have the scan QR code. And as I mentioned, this is the DPC token, AFW hashtag MEMDM, that is provided to us by Google. So once this token is given as the email address, Google would recognize this token, install our MDM app, and all you'd have to do is just point the camera to this particular QR code over here. And automatically, your device would be enrolled, and you can assign a user to that particular device. But what if you are enrolling, say, 20, 30 devices, and you'd like the assignment process to be automatic? In that case, you have the assign users button over here, wherein you would again drop a CSV file with just these three components, mainly your serial number or your IMEI, username, email address, and group name if necessary. So all these details have to be provided in the CSV, uploaded. So once you just enroll your devices, based on the serial number or IMEI number, we would just assign the users to the devices itself. So let's see how the enrollment process goes forward with your EMM token enrollment. So over here, you'd first enter the EMM token enrollment during your initial setup. As I mentioned, Google would recognize that and install our application. You then hit on scan QR option. And once that is done, you would scan the QR code that you see over here. So this would complete the enrollment process itself. So now, as an administrator, we would be faced with certain scenarios where, say, if the organization is growing, they have purchased a bulk number of devices, say 500 new devices, and it would be, a really cumbersome task in order to unbox each and every device, plug it to a Mac machine or enter all the details in order to manually or, in a semi-automated way, we can enroll these devices itself. So how can we go for a full over-the-air automated enrollment option? So that is where your Apple Business Manager services or your zero-touch services would come into play. But they do come with certain prerequisites, wherein you would have to create an account either with Apple or Google, and then you'd have to purchase these devices directly from them or through one of their authorized resellers. So our first topic for the day would be your Apple Business Manager. So first, you would go ahead and integrate, say, your MDM server with your Apple Business Manager portal. You would add your devices to the Apple Business Manager portal, followed by which you can start distributing these new, freshly packed devices to your users, and they can just turn on the devices. And once the devices are activated, your devices will automatically get registered with the MDM solution. So how do we go about this process? First, under the Enrollment tab, you have your Apple Enrollment program. So this is just the initial configuration. You download a particular public key from us. The public key will be downloaded, and then you would have to sign in to your Apple Business Manager portal. So once you sign into the portal, this is how you would find all the required details. So you have your MDM server over here. You can add your own MDM server. You have your device listed out. So under settings, first you would add an MDM server. So once you add your MDM server, you would have to mention the server name and also upload the public key that has just been downloaded from our service. So once that is done, you can then hit on the save button over here. So once you hit on save, automatically the Apple Business Manager service would create an MDM server for you, and you can download the token. So you'd be met with this particular, dialog box. You can just click on download server token, and you can upload that server token to the MDM portal. You can also mention an email address to notify the server token expiry, as this once again has to be renewed once a year. So once the token has been uploaded, the next phase is where the first option, wherein you can authenticate and auto-assign your users on device activation, which means they would have to specify their domain name and username in order to complete the enrollment and the assignment process itself. And once that is done, the fun part is where you can skip all the configurations during the setup. So even when your users turn on their device, all they have to do is just connect it to a Wi-Fi. And if you click on select all over here and hit on create, automatically all the steps, the initial configurations would be omitted on the device end. So our servers are now set up. If you'd like to make any changes, you can hit on the actions button over here and make any changes to your servers that have been added to the solution itself. So this is your MDM server. So now you would have to add your devices into the MDM server under your Apple Business Manager portal. So over here, you first provide the reseller ID and the necessary details in order to get, your ABM services up and running. And once that is done, your resellers would activate all of your devices and give either the serial numbers or the order number, or they would provide it as a CSV file. So based on which reseller you're going for, they have their own options. So once that is done, you mention the serial number over here. You would assign it to the MDM server, which is our MDM server, and hit on done. The device would be moved to the respective service itself, and they would be displayed over here. So we have our manual sync that can be done, or an automated sync that would take place on the back end every day. So once that is done, what would happen if your devices or if your users are going to activate the devices? So they would first fall into the step once they have provided their Wi-Fi. It would automatically, so there's no step wherein they can skip the configuration. Automatically, the configuration would be installed in the devices, and boom, they would be in their home page. So this is how simple and easy the Apple enrollment part is. So it's over the air, and it's just turning on your devices. Again, I do have to say that we have a chat team. So if you have any questions regarding the enrollments that we have just discussed, you can always raise it to your chat team itself. Now, for the zero-touch enrollment. So as the symbol says, zero-touch enrollment is for your Google-based Android devices. So first, you would set up an Android zero-touch portal with your Google account. So it has to be a corporate one. followed by which you would create a configuration in your Google portal. So just like how you created the MDM server, you'd have to create a configuration in your Google portal. You would assign the MDM configuration to your devices. So I'm just trying to correlate how the ABM and the zero touch enrollment works. Once that is done, it's again the same process. So you push out these freshly packed devices to your users, they turn it on, and automatically the device would get registered with the MDM solution. So this is how your zero touch portal would look like. You have the configuration page over here. So when you click on the add configuration tab, we would automatically bring up this particular service, or the zero touch portal would bring up this. You'd have to mention all the details, and the DPC extra that is blurred out is actually the token details from our server. So how do you obtain the token details is when you go back to the MDM service over here, you have the zero touch enrollment. So here on the top right, you have the zero touch enrollment steps. So you log into the portal that has been completed, and all you'd have to do is just copy this JSON file. So this file contains all of your server details so that the devices would get automatically enrolled to this service itself. So you copy paste those details and you click on apply. So once it is applied, you have created a new configuration, and all you'd have to do is just assign devices to that configuration itself. So over here you have, it's just like your ABM portal. So you can add your devices in, you can mention the reseller ID. So all these details are just like your ABM service. So once that is done, your next focus would be on device activation. So take, for example, the user turns on the device, it would connect to a Wi-Fi solution. Automatically, the setup device page would come up. You'd have to click on accept and continue. Work device would be set up. And once that is done, the enrollment would be successful. So no scanning QR codes, nothing. You just turn on the device and the enrollment process would be completed. So this is how easily and in a more simple way you can enroll your devices over the air. So today we have discussed enrollment options for devices that are already in use and also new devices, but we didn't explore all the enrollment options that we have. Certain options that we have left out are NFC enrollment, Knox enrollment, Windows Autopilot, and ICD enrollment. So these are enrollment processes that are also available in our solution. If you'd like to know more about these enrollment process, you can always pitch in for a customized demo for you so that our team would reach out to you and provide a customized demo for your solution. So for raising a demo request, you can use the chat tool option. So this completes our device enrollment process. So all of the devices have now been enrolled, and I would have to push the initial configurations, or I would call it the payloads, to your managed devices. So as a corporate, I would require certain payloads that has to be present on my devices itself. So my company has forced me to, push out certain configurations, which first would force the users to set up a passcode policy, and which would also help them in pre-configuring certain details like your Wi-Fi, VPN, email, and your Exchange mail services as well. We'd also help users to sign in to all of the applications automatically. So users cannot remember all of their, say, login details. So we would help them to sign in to the applications automatically. And if they are corporate devices, you don't want your users to, have any wallpapers that they like. You can customize the wallpaper for your corporate-based devices itself. So let's see how we can create a profile. So under device management, so now that the say enrollment process has been completed, you have the groups and devices where your groups would fall under, but these groups would require a profile. A profile is nothing but the configurations or the payloads that we would be deploying to your devices. So here you create an Apple profile, you provide it a meaningful name. So Apple passcode policy. You hit on continue. And the first profile setup that comes up is for your passcode. So if it's a corporate device, I can either allow the user to set up a passcode or even prevent them from setting up a passcode at all. But in my case, I would like my users to set up the passcode so that the device would be more secure. Followed by which I can set certain details over here, whether the passcode should contain a simple value or an alphanumeric value, what would be the passcode length. So I'll set it for 4 right now, whether it should have any special characters, what is the maximum idle time before lock. So all these details, even the maximum passcode age as to when it has to be renewed. So all these details can be mentioned over here. You click on save and you publish this particular profile. So once this profile has been published, you go back to your groups and devices, you choose a particular group, and you apply or associate, I would call the profile itself. So I have named it as per passcode policy. I would push out this particular profile. So any device that gets this profile would have to set up the passcode in them. So this is how your devices would look like. So we would automatically force the users in order to present or to set up a passcode in the device itself. But what if, my say corporate comes up to me and says, hey, simple value passwords can be easily, broken. I would like to make it a bit more complex. So in that case, you immediately jump over to the profiles page. You have your Apple passcode policy that you have created, and you can modify this profile. So you hit on modify profile over here. I would like to have the same name, and immediately, as per my boss's rule, I change it to alphanumeric. I increase the passcode length to 8. Special characters I can put in 2 so that my users would have a really tough time even figuring out the passcode for themselves, followed by which I would save and publish this profile. So notice something has changed over here, which is the latest version. So the latest version is the new changes that you have made to a particular profile. And in order to get this profile updated to your devices, you can just choose a group or a device that has this particular profile. So if I'm choosing this particular group over here, under profiles, you would see that the distributed version is at 1, while the latest version is at 2. So all I have to do now is just upgrade this profile over here to the latest version so that it gets the latest profile itself. So this is how you, push out the latest version of the profile to your devices so that your users would have to configure, the latest details in them, wherein they'd have to go for an 8-digit code. Now, for the other policies that we have just seen, like Wi-Fi, single sign-on, all those policies. So I've pre-configured a particular policy for you guys. So over here, I go to provisioning devices. Again, I can choose on this particular profile. I get a summary of the profile details that has been configured. I can modify the profile from here as well. I click on continue. And the first option that I would like to distribute is the Wi-Fi services. So I don't want to provide the Wi-Fi password to anyone, but rather, how can it be automatically set? Well, that would be through your Wi-Fi payload over here. You mentioned the Wi-Fi name, whether you'd like to connect to this Wi-Fi automatically, wherein when the device is in the vicinity of that Wi-Fi range, it would connect to that service, the security type and the password, save, and this particular profile or configuration has been configured. Then you have your Exchange Active Sync mail. So this is a predominantly used platform for email services. So remember, we were assigning users to, we were assigning users to newly enrolled devices. So over here, I have the ability to create mailboxes for each and every user to whom the devices have been assigned to. So that would be through a simple process, whether if it's an Office 365 account, which is O365, wherein we mention the server details, the username, the identity certificate, if necessary, can be uploaded. And for additional security, you can go for OAuth as well. Or if it's an Exchange on-premise, you mentioned the server details over here of your Exchange on-premise service, your domain details, and your username and email address would automatically be fetched from your devices itself. So these are dynamic variables, and we would automatically fetch these particular details. So once that is done, you hit on save, you publish the profile and you distribute it, and the mail services would be created in your mobile devices. All your users would have to do is just enter their password in order for authentication purposes. But what if they are using, say, Lotus Pro Traveler or Zimbra email services? Zimbra again falls under the Exchange Active Sync category, so you can use the Exchange profile itself. But if it's Lotus Pro Traveler or G Suite in this case, they would fall under the email platform, wherein you fill in all the details like account type, like IMAP or POP. So this is something that most administrators who deal with the mail server part would know. So you can just enter those details, and using the dynamic variables, we would pull your user details and set up the mail services for them as well. Now, the next option would be the fun one, which is the VPN. So if you'd like to automatically configure the VPN in your devices wherein your users do not have to provide any details, that's when you go for the VPN option. So you select the connection type that your company uses, the connection name, the server name to which the devices would be reaching out. And again, we would fetch the username from the enrollment page itself or from the Active Directory that you have integrated with the solution. So you have your authentication settings over here, so you can provide the password, and all the details would be saved in the mobile device. So the user can turn on and turn off the VPNs as and when required. We also have VPN on demand, where if the VPN has to be turned on in order to access certain sites or domains that are listed out, you can just mention the domain details over here, and your users can reach the particular site. But what if you'd like to, say, enable the VPN solution only if certain or specific applications are in use? So that's when you go for the per app VPN, which is a more, say, constrained space where the VPN would work only if certain applications are opened. So whether you'd like to automatically connect to the VPN when you are selecting these applications, and whether it has to go through an app proxy or packet tunneling. So these are certain complex cases wherein if you have all these configurations up and ready, you can go for them. And then comes your general VPN settings. So you choose which product you'd like, and then you can go for all these configuration details like how we had seen for VPN. So once this is done, you hit on save and all your details would be saved. So next option would be to sign in to all of the applications. So this would heavily depend upon a particular authentication called as the Kerberos authentication or protocol that comes with your Active Directory solution. So once that has been set up on your end, you can mention those details, your Active Directory details like the account name to display, the Kerberos principal name, etc. So once that is done, you can configure this setting, this enterprise single sign-on setting, either for all the applications that you're distributing through the MDM service, or you can just specify certain apps which has to use the single sign-on. So once that is done, you can hit on save, and this configuration would be saved on your profiles as well. So when I hit on save over here, as you can see, I would have to hit on proceed. So this is just a warning that we throw when multiple payloads are configured for the same profile. So once this is done, I can publish the profile, go ahead and I can distribute it to my devices itself. So this is how we go about in, say, preparing or configuring your devices using the profiles option. So how can I prevent unmanaged devices from accessing corporate emails? This is, say, one of the most important or, say, key features that we have under our MDM solution, which is the conditional exchange access. So to put it in simple terms, as the picture depicts, any device that has been enrolled with the MDM solution can have access to your Exchange Server or Office 365, while any personal device that the user might have, which is not enrolled with the MDM solution, cannot have access to the Office 365 or Exchange Server. So you would ask, Naveen, why would you go ahead and block the email services? Well, if you'd like to have, say, the email attachments open only within the container so that it's secure, then I would like to secure my emails as well. Because the users would know their user details like their username and password, and in certain cases, even the server details as well in order to access it. So that's why we bring in, say, a firewall-like structure in order to prevent unauthorized access to your email services. So what are the prerequisites to set up the conditional exchange access? Well, first, your Active Directory should be configured. Self-enrollment must be enabled for your BYOD devices. So this is just for BYOD. And if you're running Exchange Server 2010, you'd have to enable a particular setting called as basic authentication in that machine. So once that is done, we would see how the conditional exchange access can be set up. So you integrate the Exchange Server with the MDM. You enforce a particular conditional exchange access policy through the MDM itself, and only the devices that are enrolled with the MDM solution would gain access to their Exchange mail services. So this is your conditional exchange access page. So under the device management tab, you have the conditional exchange access or CEA. So you would configure the CEA, whether for Exchange on-premise or Office 365, enter the admin details. Once this has been saved, you click on next. So this is where your access policy comes into play, the configuration that would be applied on your devices. So you click on configure now, and here is where we would fetch all of your mailboxes, basically the users who are synced in your Exchange service. So whether you would like to apply this policy for all the users or just a selected few, you can choose. And you can also give some grace period for your users as well. So you just give them, say, 2 or 3 days time so that they can get their personal devices enrolled with the MDM solution so that they can have access to their email services itself. So once you have configured the details over here, your access policy would be configured, and we would fetch basically all of the details. The mail services or mail accounts that have been logged in, ones that are allowed through the allowed state over here, or ones that are blocked, wherein the user has accessed the particular mail service from, say, an unauthorized device itself. So this is how we go forward with the conditional exchange access. So this is a really, really key feature if you're looking at email management services, wherein you push out the mail services through the MDM, like I had mentioned, through profiles, and then you impose a security or a configuration, or in other terms, a policy, you would say, wherein these emails can be accessed only if the device is enrolled via the MDM, so that you can have a strict control, I would say, over the mail services and the attachments that come with them, which would have a lot of confidential details. So now we have discussed in detail as to how you can enroll the devices, how you can push out certain basic configurations, and how we can we have already gone through the conditional exchange access in detail. So if you have any questions, you can raise them to the chat. Our expert panel is waiting, who would answer all your questions. And also, if you'd like to have a personalized demo for you, wherein we would discuss on other enrollment options and even dwell into intricate details regarding how you would like to use the solution in your office or in your environment, we can help you out over a demo session as well. So all the options are provided. So let's take a look at the scenarios and solutions. So first scenario, my organization uses Windows devices. So how can I enroll these devices in a bulk manner without any user interaction. So this is kind of like your Apple enrollment program or the zero touch enrollment that we have just discussed. So here under the MDM portal, you have enrollment, and at the bottom, you have your Windows 10 enrollment. So here you have Azure Enrollment Program, which is very similar to your Apple ABN services or your Google's Zero Touch Enrollment Program. You also have Windows ICD enrollment over here, wherein you can use that enrollment option to enroll your, say, Windows machines in a more Apple configurator way fashion. Or you can go ahead with the laptop and Surface Pro enrollment, where you can just say deploy a particular bat file that we have given over here that you can download from our service. And if you run it, the device would be enrolled with the MDM. So you also have a lot of enrollment options when it comes with Windows-based devices. Now, for scenario two, say an employee has moved from one department to another, and you would have to remove all the old profiles and restrictions and replace them with new ones. So how can this be done over the air? So it's a simple process. So I come down to Device Management tab. I have my groups and devices, and say, for example, in one particular group, which is the marketing group. So let's meddle around with their service. Okay, HR department. Yeah, I did find a device over here. So all you'd have to do is just choose a particular device, hit on the move group option. You have all of the groups that you have created listed out over here. And I would like to move it to the passcode group just so that I can mess with them and they would have to set up a highly complex password. So once I hit on select, automatically all the profiles and apps that have been distributed to this particular device will be removed, and the new set of profiles, which is the passcode policy alone, would be applied to this particular user. So this would satisfy scenario two. Scenario three is where I want the downloads from our internal websites to be viewed only using a managed app. Managed apps are basically your MDM application or any application distributed through the MDM service. Well, that can be done under profiles over here. Create profile, Apple, for example. I will hit on continue. And under here, you have your managed web domains. So here you mention your server details or your page details or the URL. And if you hit on save and publish, any documents that is downloaded from this particular site can only be opened by, say, your MDM application, which has a reader in it, or can be, say, accessed or can be opened by your applications that are distributed through the MDM solution itself. Next, for scenario four. So I want to prevent my users from removing the devices from the management solution. Well, that is a really key part that most of the administrators would be looking out for. So you don't want your users to, say, mess around with the device and remove them from management altogether. So for that, we have under your enrollment Android MEMDM app, we have the ability to prevent the users or prevent the users from removing the MEMDM app at all. Under Windows as well, we have the ability to allow the user to delete the MDM account. So if it counts for your Apple devices, if the devices are enrolled through the Apple enrollment program, Apple itself would automatically block the option to delete the management profile from the devices. But what if these are, say, BYOD iOS devices, in which case Apple has some tricky privacy policies when the user is allowed to remove the MDM profile. But you as an administrator can get a notification saying that, hey, this device has been unmanaged. So you can reach out to the user and ask them as to why they have removed the policies from the devices. So please take note that when a device is unmanaged, all of the corporate data would be automatically removed, or we could say wiped from the device itself, just your corporate data. Scenario 5 is where I want to encrypt all of the Mac devices in my organization. So does MDM allow bulk encryption? Well, we do. Under the Device Management tab, we have the profiles once again, and we didn't look at one specific payload. So under your Apple, we have something called as the file vault encryption over here. So you can encrypt your Mac machines using a personal recovery key, which is known only to the user. You can go for an institutional recovery key, which is known by you as the administrator, or our best option or solution to this is to encrypt using a personal and an institutional recovery key. So even if the user forgets it, you still have the key, and if you forget it, the user has the key. So this is how you can encrypt your Mac machines to your using your MDM solution, and the same profile can be applied to all of the Mac machines that have been enrolled into the MDM solution itself. So that completes the scenarios. Now for the questions that were raised during the previous sessions. So question number one, I have purchased a few devices neither directly from Apple nor from resellers. So you have gone down the tough path of finding it from, say, a third-party seller. And how can you enroll it using Apple Business Manager? Well, Apple has introduced a new option wherein you can, say, add a device to the device enrollment program, which in other terms right now is the Apple Business Manager portal, and you can enroll your devices from the ABM services itself. So this is just your Apple configurator services that I've taken the screenshot over here. All you have to do is connect the particular device. You can prepare it directly or create a blueprint and just activate this one option alone. That would be all. Question number two. How does Mobile Device Manager Plus protect the server from unauthorized access? So over here, I move back to the server. I go down to admin, user administration. Secure authentication would be my first part, wherein I can set the password policy. So for my technicians, whether they can have a simple passcode type, a complex one, the passcode length, number of histories to be maintained, etc., and even the lockout duration. So all these details, once I have set as per the requirements, I hit on save, and I can also go for two-factor authentication, wherein if I enable two-factor authentication, the OTP would either be sent through email or through the Google Authenticator services that you would install in your mobile devices. So based on that, you have your TFA, we would call it, and you have a secure access to your MDM login page itself. Now for question three, is it possible to apply a profile created for one platform to devices that are running on other platforms? No, right now there are no possible ways to apply a profile that is created for one platform to run on devices that are on other platforms. So if you're creating an Apple profile, it's only applicable for your Apple devices. The same amount of payloads can be found in your Android as well, which would be applicable for your Android-based devices. Question four, I want to apply different policies as separate profiles. So is it possible to apply multiple profiles to multiple devices? Well, yes. Technically, under the groups, our recommendation would be to create a profile for each and every payload. So if it's going to be passcode, you have a profile for passcode. If it's going to be restrictions, a profile for restrictions. So even if there are going to be certain minute changes from time to time, you can update those profiles alone to the latest version so that we don't apply the entire initial profile, I would say. So if it's going to have the email services over there, your user would again have to give in their password in order to obtain the latest email. So in order to prevent that scenario, you can go for a more diverse way of applying multiple profiles to multiple devices. And question five, what will happen if I apply two profiles with contradictory restrictions? Well, this is a tricky one to start off with. So under your device management tab, say, for example, you are creating a policy which restricts, say, your Wi-Fi in your Apple devices, which restricts the Wi-Fi or which restricts the camera to go up with a simple one. So this is profile one. I have restricted camera option. I have distributed to the device. Profiles two, I have a restriction, but over there, I have allowed the camera option, in which case I distribute it to the device. So the device has two profiles, but the configuration or the policy that the device would take is the one which has the highest security, you know, intentions in mind, which would be the initial profile wherein I have restricted the camera access. So when two profiles are, distributed to a device, the camera access would be restricted in this scenario. But I another case over here is for your Android devices, wherein the latest profile or profile number two would be applied on your device. So we take the same scenario or the same example. So if camera two profile two, I'm sorry, has the camera enabled, then the camera would be enabled in your Android-based devices. So do keep in mind, Apple, two profiles come together, the best solution would be cooked up and the device would take that because Apple is all about privacy, guys. Right? If it's going to be Android, Android is more like, yeah, man, I have profile number two. I'm applying those configuration details. So do keep in mind of the profile details that you are applying to your devices. So this brings us to the end of our webinar. So do rate us on a scale from 1 to 5, where 5 is the best. You can also share or spread a word on your social media sites, you know, which would encourage us to provide more training sessions and provide more content as well. So our next training schedule is scheduled for May 21st, 2019, where we would discuss on app management and device security once again. So this is Naveen here signing off. Thank you for your time and have a great day, guys. Thank you.